Rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse on the 28th floor. Each droplet exploded against glass like tiny grenades. The sound filled the room with violence masquerading as weather. Richard Donovan stood frozen in the doorway of his daughter's bedroom, his phone trembling in his hand. The screen glowed with 3 numbers he'd dialed 100 times in his career, but never for himself. 911. His finger hovered over the call button on. Inside the room, his 5-year-old daughter Emma lay motionless on the carpet. Her lips had turned a pale blue. The color drained from her small face like water from a broken glass, like life seeping away in real time. An empty asthma inhaler lay beside her tiny hand. Useless, abandoned. A prop in a play Richard didn't understand yet. Behind him, his wife Jennifer sobbed into her hands. Her mascara ran in black rivers down her perfect cheeks. Each sob shook her shoulders. Her voice broke with each word. Performance or genuine grief? Richard couldn't tell anymore. I don't know what happened. I was only gone for 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. I went downstairs to get her medicine from the car, and when I came back, she was like this. Oh God, Richard, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But Richard wasn't listening to her words anymore. His mind had detached, floated away to other moments. Other warning signs he'd ignored like bills stuffed in a drawer. 3 months ago, Emma whispering at bedtime, her small voice barely audible over the sound of traffic below. Daddy, I'm scared of her. 2 months ago, bruises on Emma's arm, small, purple, finger-shaped. Jennifer's explanation delivered with a concerned mother's voice. She fell at the playground. You know how rough the other children can be. 1 month ago, Maria the housekeeper trying to speak to him, her English halting but urgent. Mr. Donovan, we need to talk about Mrs. Donovan. Please, Richard cutting her off. Not now, Maria. I have a conference call with Singapore. It can wait. Yesterday, an anonymous email in his inbox, subject line in all caps. Your daughter is in danger. Richard hovering over delete. Probably spam, probably malware, probably nothing. Click. Gone. Forgotten before the next email loaded. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Richard dropped to his knees beside Emma, the carpet rough against his expensive suit pants. He gathered her into his arms. Her body felt too light, too fragile, like she might disappear completely if he didn't hold on tight enough, like she was already half ghost. Daddy's here now, he whispered into her hair. It smelled like strawberry shampoo, like childhood, like innocence. I won't leave you again, I promise. I promise. Over Emma's shoulder, he saw Jennifer standing in the doorway. The tears still streamed down her face. Her hands covered her mouth in horror. But in her eyes, just for a fraction of a second, Richard caught something else. Something cold, something calculating, something that made his blood turn to ice in his veins. The look vanished as quickly as it appeared. Jennifer's face crumpled with fresh sobs. But Richard had seen it, and for the first time in 2 years of marriage, he understood. The monster had been living in his home all along, and he'd invited her in 48 hours earlier. Monday morning arrived in Boston with weak November sunlight filtering through expensive curtains. The kind of pale light that made everything look washed out, uncertain. Richard Donovan woke at 5:30, the same time he had woken every day for the past 20 years. His body didn't need an alarm anymore. Success had programmed punctuality into his DNA like genetic code. He showered in silence. The water pressure perfect. Temperature exactly 104 degrees. Everything in his life calibrated. Controlled. He shaved in silence, dressed in the dark so he wouldn't wake Jennifer. A charcoal suit, Italian leather shoes that cost what some families spent on groceries in a month, a silk tie the color of old money, the uniform of power, the costume of success. By 6:15, he stood in his corner office on the 40th floor of the Hancock Tower. Boston spread below him like a kingdom he'd conquered. The harbor gleamed in the distance. Ships moved like toys across dark water. From this height, the whole city looked manageable, controllable, perfect. A lie he told himself every morning. His assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission. She'd learned years ago that Richard valued efficiency over courtesy, time over politeness, results over relationships. Good morning, Mr. Donovan. Your coffee? Black, 2 sugars, even though you always say none. She set the cup on his desk. The Hastings Corporation merger documents are ready for review. You have the Singapore conference call at 9. Your 10:30 with the Patterson estate. Lunch with Senator Michaels at noon. And your wife is here. Richard looked up from the contract he'd already started reviewing. Red pen in hand, finding flaws, building leverage. Jennifer? Why? She said she brought you lunch that you forgot to eat again. Richard glanced at his watch. 6:17 in the morning. Lunch. The word didn't make sense at this hour. He frowned, but nodded. Send her in. Jennifer entered like sunlight breaking through clouds. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. She carried a paper bag from the bakery Richard liked, the one near their penthouse, the one he never had time to visit anymore, the one where the owner knew his name, but Richard couldn't remember hers. She smiled. That brilliant, devastating smile that had first caught his attention 2 years ago at the grief support group. The smile that made him feel alive again after Sarah's death. The smile that made him forget, just for a moment, how lonely the world had become. How empty his penthouse felt. How quiet his life was without his first wife's laughter. Darling, she said, crossing the office to kiss his cheek, her perfume expensive. Subtle. You left without breakfast again. I worry about you. You work too hard. You need to take care of yourself. Richard felt the familiar mixture of gratitude and guilt. Jennifer took care of him, took care of Emma, managed the household, made his life easier in 1,000 small ways he never noticed until they were done. He should appreciate her more, should spend more time at home, should be a better husband, should be a lot of things he wasn't. Thank you, he said, but you didn't need to come all the way downtown. I wanted to. She set the bag on his desk, inside a croissant, fresh fruit, the protein bar he liked. Everything perfect, everything thoughtful. Besides, I had to drop Emma at school anyway. She had a little accident this morning. Spilled juice everywhere, made quite a mess. But I cleaned it up. You don't need to worry about anything. Something in Richard's chest tightened, a sensation he couldn't name, couldn't identify. Unease dressed his concern. Is she okay? Of course, you know how clumsy 5-year-olds are. They're still learning their coordination, still figuring out their bodies. But Emma wasn't clumsy. Sarah used to joke that their daughter had the coordination of a ballerina. Never tripped, never stumbled, never spilled things. She moved through the world with a grace that defied her age, until Jennifer came. Richard started to ask another question, but his phone rang. The Singapore office. The merger that would net his firm $20 million in fees. The deal he'd been building for 6 months. He glanced at Jennifer apologetically. She kissed his forehead, smoothed his collar, played the perfect wife. Go. Make your empire bigger. I'll take care of everything at home. That's what I'm here for. She left, and Richard answered the call, and the moment passed. The nagging doubt in his chest faded under the familiar rhythm of business. Contracts, negotiations, money. The things he understood, the things he could control, the things that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense when Sarah died. He didn't notice the small bruise on Jennifer's wrist as she closed the door. Didn't see the way her smile vanished the second she stepped into the hallway. Didn't hear her whispered phone call in the elevator going down. It's me, yes, soon, very soon. He suspects nothing. The man is completely blind. The mask at home. Richard came home at 7:30 that evening. Earlier than usual, but still late enough that Emma had already eaten dinner. Still late enough that the important parts of childhood had happened without him. She sat in the corner of the living room, playing quietly with an old teddy bear. Not the new toys Jennifer had bought, not the expensive dolls, or the interactive learning tablets gathering dust on her shelf. Just the worn brown bear that Sarah had given her years ago. The bear with the missing eye and the torn ear. The bear that remembered better times. Richard set down his briefcase. Leather, monogrammed, heavy with the weight of other people's problems he solved for money. Hey, princess. Emma looked up. For just a second, her face lit with pure joy, the way she used to look at him before. before Sarah died, before Jennifer came, before the world got complicated. Then she saw Jennifer standing in the kitchen doorway, and something in her expression changed, dimmed, like a light switching off, like happiness being manually shut down. Richard crossed the room and picked Emma up. She felt stiff in his arms. Not the way she used to melt against his chest when he came home. Not the way she used to wrap her small arms around his neck and squeeze tight and whisper, "I missed you, Daddy, so much." Now she just let him hold her, passive, careful, like she was afraid to do it wrong, like affection had become a test she might fail. "Did you have a good day at school?" Emma nodded but didn't speak. Her eyes tracked to Jennifer, checking, monitoring, making sure her answer was acceptable. Jennifer called from the kitchen, her voice bright, cheerful, the voice she used when Richard was home. "Dinner's ready. Your favorite steak and potatoes. I made it special." They sat at the long dining table, Richard at the head, Jennifer to his right, Emma small and quiet across from her stepmother. The table could seat 12, but the three of them made it feel enormous. An ocean of polished wood between them, a canyon they couldn't cross. Jennifer served the food, made small talk about her day, the country club, the charity gala she was planning, the new yoga instructor at the gym who was helping her find her center. Richard nodded and made appropriate sounds, but his attention kept drifting to Emma. His daughter pushed food around her plate, didn't eat, didn't speak, just stared at her vegetables like they held the secrets of the universe, like they might tell her something important if she looked hard enough. "Emma," Jennifer's voice carried a sharp edge, a warning wrapped in concern. "Eat your dinner. You need your strength. Growing girls need nutrition." Emma whispered, "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat. You're too thin already. People will think I'm not feeding you properly." But Emma wasn't too thin. She looked perfectly healthy, normal for a 5-year-old, maybe a little pale, maybe a little subdued, but physically fine. "Jennifer," Richard said gently, "if she's not hungry, maybe we can save it for later. She can have it as a snack before bed." Jennifer's smile tightened at the corners, a subtle shift most people wouldn't notice. But Richard was a trial lawyer. He'd built a career reading faces, finding tells, detecting lies. "Richard, you're always at work. You don't see how difficult she's been lately. The tantrums, the defiance, the lying. Dr. Webb says she needs more structure, more discipline, more consequences for her behavior." The child psychologist Jennifer had found 3 months ago, the one who diagnosed Emma with behavioral issues Richard had never witnessed, recommended therapy twice a week, expensive sessions that seemed to make Emma worse instead of better. Richard frowned. "Emma's never been difficult. She's always been a good kid, easy, pleasant. That's because you're not here to see it. You're not here when she throws her toys, when she talks back, when she refuses to listen. You're in your office, making money while I'm home dealing with reality." The accusation hung in the air between them. True, undeniable. A weapon she wielded with surgical precision. Richard worked 60, 70 hours a week, building his practice, making partner, then senior partner, then founding his own firm, climbing the ladder while his family life happened in the background, present for the big moments, absent for everything else. Sarah used to beg him to slow down, to be more present, to see what was happening right in front of his eyes. But Richard always had one more case, one more client, one more deal that couldn't wait, one more excuse that sounded reasonable at the time. And then Sarah died. A car accident on a rainy Tuesday. Richard had been in London closing a merger. He got the call at midnight London time. Sarah's car had wrapped around a tree on Route 2. The rain had made the road slick. She'd lost control. The car had flipped. She died on impact. Quick. Painless, the doctor said. As if that mattered. As if quick made it better. Richard got on a plane 6 hours later, landed in Boston 12 hours after that. By then, Sarah had been dead for 18 hours. He'd missed her last words, missed saying goodbye, missed everything that mattered because he'd been too busy making money they didn't need for a lifestyle they didn't want. The nurses told him Sarah had asked for him, had wanted to tell him something. But he'd been unreachable, in a meeting, closing a deal, building an empire while his wife died alone. He'd promised himself things would be different, that he'd be there for Emma, that he'd put family first, that he wouldn't make the same mistakes. But old habits died hard. Within 6 months, he was back to 70-hour weeks. Emma was 2 years old, grieving her mother, and Richard couldn't figure out how to connect with her without Sarah there to translate his daughter's needs, to bridge the gap between his emotional incompetence and Emma's emotional complexity. Then Jennifer appeared at the grief support group. Beautiful, compassionate, understanding. She didn't judge his workaholism. She offered to help, started watching Emma when the nanny called in sick, cooked meals, organized the household, made everything easier. 6 months later, they were married. Jennifer adopted Emma, became her legal mother. Richard thought he had found a solution, a partner who could handle the domestic sphere while he handled the professional one, a way to have both success and family without actually being present for either. He thought he had saved his daughter from growing up motherless. He never suspected he'd invited a predator into their home. Now, at the dinner table, Richard looked at Emma's frightened eyes and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Something he couldn't name, but couldn't ignore. "Emma," he said quietly, "can you look at me?" She raised her eyes, reluctant, scared. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Really okay?" Emma's gaze flickered to Jennifer, then back to Richard. She nodded, mechanical, rehearsed. "I'm fine, Daddy." But her voice was too small, too careful. The voice of a child who'd learned that honesty carried consequences. That truth was dangerous. That survival meant saying what people wanted to hear. Jennifer stood, began clearing plates. The conversation over. The moment passed. "She's just tired. Bedtime in 30 minutes. She needs her routine. Children thrive on consistency." Richard wanted to say something, wanted to push, but Jennifer's smile warned him not to make a scene, and Emma's expression begged him not to make things worse. So he stayed silent and hated himself for it. The bedtime confession. At 8 o'clock, Richard carried Emma to her bedroom. A rare privilege. Usually Jennifer handled bedtime. Part of her role as mother. Part of the division of labor they'd never explicitly discussed but had fallen into naturally. Or unnaturally. Richard couldn't tell anymore. Emma's room was perfect. Too perfect. Decorated in shades of pink and white that Jennifer had chosen. New furniture, new curtains, new everything. Nothing of Sarah remained except the old teddy bear clutched in Emma's arms. The last piece of her real mother. The only thing Jennifer hadn't replaced. Richard tucked her into bed, smoothed her hair back from her forehead. She looked so small against the pillows, so vulnerable, so breakable. "Emma," he said softly, "you can talk to me about anything. You know that, right?" Emma nodded but said nothing, her eyes watching the door, waiting for Jennifer to appear. "If something is wrong, if someone is hurting you, you can tell me. I'll protect you. I promise, Barbace." Her eyes went wide, frightened. She glanced at the door again. "Daddy, you have to go to London tomorrow, right? Just for 3 days. For work, a big merger, but I'll be back Friday." "Do you have to go?" The desperation in her voice cut through him like glass, like a blade between ribs. "It's important, sweetheart, but Jennifer will take care of you. You'll be fine. I want Maria to stay." Maria, the housekeeper who'd worked for them since before Emma was born. The one Jennifer kept threatening to fire for imagined infractions. The one Richard barely noticed anymore, except when he needed his shirts ironed or his coffee made. Another person he'd taken for granted. Another failure on his growing list. "Maria has days off too, Emma. She has her own family, her own life." Emma's small hand gripped his shirt. Desperate. Urgent. "Daddy, when you're not home, she's different." Richard's heart stopped. The room went cold. "Who's different?" But the door opened. Jennifer stood in the threshold, backlit by the hallway light. Her silhouette looked wrong, angular, predatory, like a shadow that didn't match the person casting it. "Everything okay in here?" Emma immediately released Richard's shirt, pulled the covers up to her chin, closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep, hiding in plain sight. "Just saying goodnight," Richard said. Jennifer crossed to the bed, bent down, kissed Emma's forehead. The gesture looked maternal, loving. But Emma flinched, just barely, just enough for Richard to notice if he was looking. And he was looking now, finally looking. "Sleep well, sweetheart," Jennifer said in that sugary voice she used around Emma. Then to Richard, "Come on, let her rest. You have that early flight. You need sleep too." Richard stood, looked back at his daughter. She lay perfectly still, eyes squeezed shut, pretending to be asleep. But he could see her breathing, too fast, too shallow. The breathing of someone afraid, the breathing of prey. He followed Jennifer out. She closed the door behind them. In the hallway, Richard stopped. "Jennifer, we need to talk about Emma." "What about her?" "She seems scared of something, of someone." Jennifer sighed, touched his arm. Her fingers felt cold through his shirt, like ice wrapped in skin. "Richard, you're imagining things. Emma's fine. She's just acting out because you are gone so much. Children need stability, need their fathers present." The subtle accusation again. Your fault, your absence, your failure. A pattern he was starting to recognize. Maybe I should cancel London. Stay home for a few days, spend time with Emma, connect with her. For just a fraction of a second, Jennifer's mask slipped. Her eyes went hard, cold, empty. Then the sweet smile returned. Practiced, perfect. "Don't be ridiculous. That deal is worth millions. Emma will be fine. I'll take care of her. That's what I'm here for. That's what you married me for." "That's what I'm afraid of," Richard thought, but didn't say. Instead, he nodded, went to pack for London. Tried to ignore the voice in his head that screamed something was wrong, that whispered he was making a terrible mistake, that begged him to stay. Later, after Jennifer had gone to bed, Richard stood in the dark hallway outside Emma's room. He could hear soft crying through the door. His daughter awake, weeping into her pillow. Alone, afraid. He put his hand on the doorknob, started to turn it, then stopped. What would he say? What would he do? Accuse Jennifer based on a 5-year-old's vague fears? Risk his marriage over intuition? Start a war over suspicion? He was a lawyer. He dealt in evidence, facts, proof, hard data that could survive cross-examination. And he had none. So Richard went to his own bedroom, lay awake beside his sleeping wife, and tried not to think about the way Emma had flinched when Jennifer kissed her goodnight, tried not to hear his daughter's muffled sobs through the wall, tried not to feel like the worst father in the world, tried and failed. The discovery. Richard didn't go to London. At 5 in the morning, he sat in his home office staring at his laptop. The boarding pass for Flight 287 sat on his desk. Departure time, 7:45. He should already be in the car heading to Logan Airport, should already be thinking about the merger, about the 20 million in fees, about success. But he couldn't stop thinking about Emma's face, the fear in her eyes, the trembling in her voice. "Daddy, when you're not home, she's different." His phone buzzed. An email from an unknown sender. Subject line, "Your daughter is in danger." Richard almost deleted it. His cursor hovered over the trash icon. Spam, probably malware, probably a scam, probably nothing. But what if it wasn't? He glanced at the door. Jennifer still slept upstairs. Emma too. The house sat quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. The city outside still sleeping. He was alone with his doubts. Richard clicked the email. It contained no text, just an attachment, a video file, and a single sentence that made his blood run cold. "Check your home security footage from last Thursday, 2 to 4 p.m. Don't let Jennifer know you're watching." Richard's finger hovered over the attachment. Every instinct screamed trap, virus, scam, but Emma's voice echoed in his memory. "When you're not home, she's different." He clicked. The video opened, grainy security camera footage from inside his own home. The timestamp read Thursday, November 10th, 2:14 p.m., 4 days ago, a day Richard had been in court, a day he'd come home late, a day that seemed normal. The camera showed the living room. Emma sat on the floor playing with her teddy bear. Innocent, peaceful, just a child being a child. Jennifer entered the frame. Her face looked different, harder. Nothing like the soft, maternal expression she wore around Richard. This was something else, something cruel, something inhuman. Jennifer yanked the teddy bear from Emma's hands, threw it across the room like garbage. "I told you to clean up your toys." "I'm sorry," Emma's voice tiny, terrified. the voice of someone who'd heard this before, who knew what came next. "Sorry doesn't cut it, you little brat." Jennifer grabbed Emma's arm, hard, violent, pulled her to her feet. Emma cried out in pain. "Shut up! If you tell your father, I'll make sure you never see him again. Do you understand me? I'll tell him you're disturbed, dangerous. I'll have you sent away. And he'll believe me, because he always believes me." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Your mother didn't want you. That's why she died. She drove into that tree to get away from you, because you're worthless, unlovable, a burden. And your father doesn't want you either. He just doesn't know how to get rid of you. But I do. I know exactly how." Richard's hands shook so badly he could barely control the mouse. He wanted to stop watching, wanted to close the laptop and pretend he'd never seen this. But he kept watching, forcing himself to see, to know, to understand what he'd been too blind to notice. The footage continued. Jennifer withholding food as punishment, locking Emma in her room, forcing her to stand in the corner for hours. And through it all, Emma's small voice, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Then the footage jumped forward. Same day, 3:47 p.m., Jennifer on her phone turned away from the camera, her voice different, calculating, cold. "I know, Marcus, just a few more months. The trust fund will be ours. The insurance policy is in place. And the old man suspects nothing. He's too busy playing lawyer to notice what's happening in his own home." Richard stopped breathing. Trust fund, insurance policy, the old man. She was talking about him. He fumbled for his phone, opened the facial recognition app his firm used for client verification, screenshot Jennifer's face from the video, ran it through the database. The search took 30 seconds. Felt like 30 years. 3 results appeared. Jennifer Morrison, his wife. Clean record. Julia Mendez, arrested for fraud in Phoenix, 2016. Charges dropped due to lack of evidence. Jessica Martinez, wanted for questioning in the death of Harold Chen, San Diego, 2018. Warrant active. Richard clicked the third result. A police report appeared. Harold Chen, 62, wealthy investor, fell down the stairs in his home, broke his neck, died instantly. His wife, Jessica Martinez, claimed she was out shopping, inherited $8 million. No witnesses, no evidence of foul play. The investigation noted suspicious elements. The stairs were carpeted. Harold was in good health, no history of falls, but no evidence of murder. Case closed. Woman disappeared before investigators could question her further. Richard zoomed in on the attached photo. It was Jennifer, his wife, the woman sleeping upstairs, the woman he'd trusted with his daughter. His phone slipped from his hands, clattered on the desk, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet house. She'd done this before. Married wealthy men, killed them or drove them to ruin, moved on with their money. A pattern, a system, a career built on corpses. And Emma, the trust fund Sarah had established. $10 million held until Emma turned 18, with Richard as trustee. But if Richard died and Emma was deemed unable to inherit due to mental instability or death, Jennifer, as the adoptive mother, would gain control. She wasn't just abusing his daughter. She was planning to kill them both. Richard grabbed his keys, ran to his car, drove through empty Boston streets to his office, used his security clearance to access the firm's investigative database, the one they used for vetting clients and opponents, the one with access to records most people couldn't see. He searched everything. Jennifer Morrison, Julia Mendez, Jessica Martinez. The truth unfolded like a nightmare. Systematic, methodical, horrifying. 4 marriages, 4 wealthy widowers, 3 dead husbands, 1 bankrupted and institutionalized after a convenient mental breakdown. A trail of destroyed families across the country, children left traumatized or dead, fortunes stolen, lives ruined, and Jennifer walked away every time. Clean, untouchable, already hunting her next victim. Richard had been so easy, a wealthy widower, drowning in grief, too busy with work to pay attention, too guilty about his absence to question anything, too desperate for help to see the predator offering it. His phone rang. Jennifer. He stared at the screen, declined the call, Immediately, she called again, then texted, "Darling, where are you? You missed your flight. Are you okay? I'm worried. Call me." Richard turned off his phone, sat in his office as dawn broke over Boston, and made a decision. He wasn't going to run, wasn't going to hide, wasn't going to play the game carefully and legally while his daughter remained in danger. He was going to end this. Today. Now, whatever it took. Richard drove home at 8:30 in the morning, parked in the underground garage, took the elevator to the penthouse. His hands steady now, his mind clear. 20 years as a trial lawyer had taught him how to stay calm under pressure, how to prepare for battle, how to win. This was just another case, another opponent to defeat, except this time the stakes weren't money or reputation. They were his daughter's life. He opened the door. Jennifer stood in the kitchen, phone to her ear. She saw him and smiled. That perfect, lying smile he'd fallen for 2 years ago. He just walked in. "I'll call you back." She hung up, crossed to him. Concern painted on her face like makeup. "Richard, where were you? I was worried sick. You missed your flight. Did something happen with the London deal?" "I know who you are." Jennifer's smile froze, just for a second, then recovered. "What are you talking about? Where's Emma?" "In her room, playing." "Richard, what's going on?" Richard walked past Jennifer, down the hallway, opened Emma's door. His daughter sat on the floor, perfectly still, clutching her teddy bear. When she saw him, her face collapsed with relief, with hope, with desperate joy. "Daddy!" Richard knelt beside her, examined her arms. The bruises were there, fading yellow and green, some fresh, purple and angry. A timeline of abuse written on his daughter's skin. "Did she hurt you?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. "Does she hurt you when I'm not home?" Another nod. "Show me." Emma pulled up her sleeves. More bruises, finger marks, grip marks, evidence of violence, of cruelty, of systematic abuse happening while Richard built his empire. He pulled Emma into his arms, felt her small body shake with sobs, felt the weight of his failure crushing him. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I didn't see it. But I see it now, and I'm not leaving you ever again. Do you understand? I'm staying right here. Forever." Behind him, Jennifer's voice, different now, colder. "Richard, what are you doing? You're scaring her." He turned. Jennifer stood in the doorway, the mask still in place, the concerned stepmother. But her eyes had gone cold, empty, reptilian. "Get away from my daughter." "Your daughter? Richard, I'm her mother, legally. I adopted her. She's mine as much as yours. You're a con artist, a murderer. Jessica Martinez, Julia Mendez. How many other names? How many other victims?" Jennifer's expression shifted. The mask cracked, then shattered completely. What remained underneath made Richard's blood run cold. She smiled, but it wasn't the sweet smile he knew. It was something else. Something predatory and ancient and utterly without compassion. Something that had never been human. "Finally," she said, "I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Took you long enough. You're supposed to be so smart. Such a brilliant lawyer. But you're just another blind fool who thinks with his dick and his wallet. I know who you are. What you've done. The police will too." Jennifer laughed, bitter, triumphant. "Does it matter? The important thing is I'm Jennifer Donovan now, Emma's legal mother, and you're about to have a very unfortunate accident. Just like Harold, just like Robert, just like Paul. You men are all the same, so easy to manipulate, so desperate for a woman to make your lives easier." She pulled something from her pocket. Richard saw the flash of metal, a knife, small, surgical, deadly. "Do you really think I'll let you destroy everything I've built? I've been planning this for 2 years. The insurance policy, the trust fund, the perfect setup. Dr. Webb ready to testify about your mental instability. Witnesses who will say you've been distant, cold, neglectful, and you're not going to ruin it because you suddenly developed a conscience." Richard stood, stepped between Jennifer and Emma, his body a shield. "You're not touching her." "How are you going to stop me? Call the police?" With what evidence? I'll say you're having a breakdown, that you've been violent, that you're making wild accusations because I asked for a divorce. I'll play the terrified wife, the protective mother, and they'll believe me because I'm very, very good at this. I have video of you abusing Emma. Jennifer's smile widened. From where? The security cameras I disabled 6 months ago? The ones that mysteriously malfunction whenever I'm alone with your daughter? I'm not stupid, Richard. I've done this before. I know how to cover my tracks. She had been planning this. Every detail, every contingency. Richard felt ice spread through his wit, but he was a trial lawyer. He'd faced impossible odds before. Won cases everyone said were unwinnable. He just needed to buy time. Get Emma out, call for help. His hand moved to his pocket. Toward his phone. Jennifer saw it. Don't. She raised the knife. Don't move. Jennifer, please, let's talk about this like adults. Name your price. I'll pay you whatever you want. I want the insurance payout, 25 million, and the trust fund, 10 million, and I want to watch you die knowing you failed, again. Just like you failed Sarah. Just like you failed Emma every day for 2 years. The words hit like physical blows, but Richard didn't move, didn't react. Behind him, he heard Emma's quiet crying. You'll never get away with this. Of course I will. I always do. Jennifer stepped forward, knife raised, and the door behind her exploded inward. Boston police poured into the room. 5 officers, guns drawn, voices shouting commands that overlapped into noise. Drop the weapon! On the ground! Now! Hands where we can see them! Jennifer froze, her face twisted with rage and disbelief, with the shock of a predator caught in a trap. What is this? A woman stepped through the door, mid-40s, detective's badge clipped to her belt. She looked at Richard with something like respect, like recognition, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Mr. Donovan, Detective Sarah Chen, Boston PD. We've been monitoring your wife for 6 months. Thank you for the confirmation we needed. Richard stared. His mind couldn't process what was happening. The room spun. Reality felt negotiable. Detective Chen continued. Professional, calm. That email you received this morning, that was from us. We've been building a case against Jessica Martinez for 3 years. But she's careful. We needed her to confess, to threaten someone while we were listening, to drop the mask completely. She held up a small device. You've been wearing a wire since you left your office this morning. We heard everything, every threat, every confession, every word. Richard looked down, his collar. The tiny microphone, he hadn't noticed them attach when they'd intercepted him in the parking garage an hour ago. When Detective Chen had introduced herself in the shadows, explained the situation, asked for his help, wired him like an informant, sent him back into danger with police listening, he'd agreed without hesitation. Let them turn him into bait. Walk back into his home knowing his wife was a killer, knowing she might attack, but also knowing the police were listening, ready to intervene, ready to save him. Officers handcuffed Jennifer. She fought, screamed, the mask completely gone now, nothing left but rage, nothing left but the monster she'd always been. You bastard! You set me up! You tricked me! Yes, Richard said quietly. I did. They dragged her out, still screaming threats, still promising revenge, still believing somehow she'd find a way out, still convinced she was smarter than everyone else. Richard turned back to Emma. His daughter stared at him with wide, traumatized eyes, with shock, with hope, with fear that this might not be real. Is she gone? Yes, sweetheart, she's gone. Forever. She can never hurt you again. I promise. Emma threw herself into his arms, sobbed against his chest. Richard held her, rocked her, made promises he'd actually keep this time. Promises that mattered. Promises about presence instead of presence. I'm staying. I'm here. You're safe now. I promise. I promise. I promise. Detective Chen waited until Emma's crying quieted before speaking, her voice gentle, respectful of the moment. Mr. Donovan, there's more you should know about your wife, about what she was planning. Richard looked up, still holding Emma, still protecting her. What else? She has a partner, Dr. Marcus Webb, the child's psychologist. He's been helping her gaslight you. Document Emma's supposed behavioral issues. Build a case for why you're an unfit father, creating a paper trail that would hold up in court. Why? So when you died, she'd get full custody, access to the trust fund, control of everything. And Emma? Chen's voice trailed off. What about Emma? Children are inconvenient in her business model. They can inherit money, make claims, cause problems. In her previous marriages, the children either died in the same accidents as their fathers or disappeared into the foster system shortly after. Broken, silent, destroyed. Richard's arms tightened around Emma, his daughter, the little girl he'd almost lost through his own blindness, through his own willful ignorance, through his own cowardice disguised as professionalism. Where's Webb now? We arrested him an hour ago. He's cooperating, telling us everything about the insurance fraud, the planned murder, the whole operation. He knows the evidence against him is overwhelming. He's trying to save himself, hoping for a deal. Richard closed his eyes, felt Emma's heartbeat against his chest. Strong, alive, safe. For now. What happens now? Now you testify. Help us put her away for life, and you take care of your daughter. She's going to need therapy, time, a lot of healing, professional help, and a father who's actually present. Whatever she needs, whatever it takes, I'll do it. Detective Chen nodded, approval in her eyes. Mr. Donovan, can I give you some advice, father to father? Please, your daughter doesn't need a perfect father. She needs a present one. She needs you to be there, really there. Not just physically, but emotionally. Can you do that? Richard looked at Emma, at her tear-stained face, her frightened eyes, the bruises on her arms, the scars he couldn't see but knew were there, the damage he'd allowed by being absent, by being blind, by being a coward. He thought about Sarah, about her last words before she died, words the nurses had relayed to him 18 hours too late, words he'd never actually heard from her lips. Tell Richard to slow down. Tell him to see our babies, really see them. Tell him not to miss what matters. Tell him I love him, but he's destroying himself and everyone around him. He'd missed it for years, chosen work over family, money over connection, success over presence, empire over love. And it had almost cost him everything. Yes, Richard said, his voice stronger now, clearer. I can do that. I will do that. Starting right now. He stood, picked Emma up. She wrapped her arms around his neck, buried her face in his shoulder, trust slowly returning, hope cautiously emerging. Richard carried his daughter out of the bedroom, out of the penthouse that had become a nightmare, away from the woman who'd almost destroyed them, towards something better, something real, something that mattered. Behind them, Boston stretched into morning, the city Richard had conquered, the empire he'd built, the success that had blinded him to what really mattered. He'd won every case, every argument, every battle, except the one that counted most. But he had a second chance now, a chance to be the father Emma deserved, the father Sarah had begged him to become, the father he should have been all along. And this time, Richard Donovan wasn't going to fail. This time, he was going to get it right. The coffee shop sat in the North End, tucked between old brick buildings that remembered when Boston was young, when immigrants poured through these streets speaking languages that would never make it into history books, when survival meant working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours and still somehow finding joy. Richard Donovan arrived at 9 o'clock that evening, Emma asleep in his arms. The weight of her small body against his chest felt both precious and terrifying. How had he not noticed how light she was, how fragile, how breakable? Detective Sarah Chen waited in the back booth, away from windows, away from other customers, away from anyone who might overhear what needed to be said. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from seeing too much darkness, from fighting battles that never quite end, from knowing that for every monster caught, 10 more wait in the shadows. Richard slid into the seat across from her. Emma stirred but didn't wake. He kept one hand on her back, feeling her breathe. Proof she was real, proof she was safe, proof he hadn't failed completely. You brought her, Sarah said. Good, don't let her out of your sight. Not yet. Not for a long time. How long have you been tracking Jennifer? Sarah pulled a thick manila folder from her bag, set it on the table between them. The folder was worn, used, filled with years of investigation, years of frustration, years of watching a monster walk free. 3 years, ever since my own daughter. She stopped, took a breath, continued, her voice steady but her eyes betraying pain. My ex-husband remarried 2 years after our divorce. His new wife seemed perfect, beautiful, kind, everything I wasn't. Or so he said, so the court said, so everyone said except me. Sarah opened the folder. Inside, photographs, police reports, newspaper clippings yellowed with age. Within 6 months, I noticed changes in my daughter. She stopped talking during our visits, flinched when I hugged her, had bruises she couldn't explain, wore long sleeves in summer, stopped making eye contact. Richard felt sick. He knew this story. He'd lived it, was living it. I investigated, used my access, my connections, discovered my ex's new wife had a history, different names, different cities, always the same pattern. Marry a man with money, isolate his children, create accidents, walk away rich. Sarah spread the photos across the table. 4 men, all dead or destroyed, all victims of the same predator. Harold Chen, San Diego 2018, wealthy investor, 62, widower, lonely, vulnerable. Married Jessica Martinez. 6 months later, fell down the carpeted stairs in his home, broke his neck, died instantly. Jessica inherited $8 million. Investigation found it suspicious but had no evidence. She disappeared before they could question her properly. The photo showed an older Asian man, kind eyes, successful, unsuspecting, a good man who made one bad decision. Robert Fletcher, Phoenix 2016, real estate developer, 54, also a widower, also lonely, also vulnerable, married Julia Mendez. His house burned down 7 months later. Robert and his 7-year-old son both died in the fire. Julia barely escaped, inherited $12 million. Arson investigation inconclusive. Another photo, a man in his 50s, happy, holding a young boy, both smiling for the camera, both dead now, both murdered. Paul Davidson, Miami 2010, tech entrepreneur, 49. You see the pattern, widower, successful, grieving, perfect target. Married Jennifer Morrison, car accident 3 months into the marriage. Paul died when his car went off a bridge. His 12-year-old daughter Rebecca survived but hasn't spoken since. Whatever Jennifer did to her in those 3 months destroyed something fundamental. Broke her mind, shattered her soul. Richard stared at the photo of Paul Davidson's daughter, Rebecca, 12 years old, haunted eyes even before the tragedy. What had Jennifer done to her in those 3 months? What horrors had that child witnessed? And the fourth? Sarah hesitated, her voice dropped. Carlos Martinez, Jessica's first husband, her real husband, the only one she actually married for love instead of money, died of a drug overdose in 2014. Ruled suicide. She inherited $200,000. Not much, but enough. That's when she realized killing rich men was easier than working, more profitable than any career. And she was good at it. Richard's hands shook. He looked down at Emma sleeping against him. His daughter, his baby girl. How close had she come to joining this gallery of victims? How close had he come to being another photo in Sarah's folder? Why didn't you arrest her before she got to me? No proof. She's careful, meticulous. The accidents look like accidents. Witnesses don't talk. Evidence disappears. She's been doing this for 10 years, getting better each time, learning from mistakes, perfecting her craft. Why didn't you warn me before the wedding? Sarah's face showed genuine regret, real pain. I tried, called your office 6 times over 2 weeks. Your assistant said you were too busy to take calls from Boston PD about personal matters. She screened me out, protected your time, did her job, and by doing it, she almost got you killed. Richard remembered, vaguely, his assistant mentioning some detective calling, something about his personal life. He'd been in the middle of a major acquisition. Told her to handle it. Never thought about it again. Another warning sign he'd ignored. Another failure. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "I should have tried harder. Should have found another way. Should have shown up at your office. At your home. Should have made you listen. It's not your fault. I should have been paying attention. Should have seen what was happening in my own home. Should have been a father instead of a lawyer." They sat in silence. Two people who'd failed to protect the children they loved. Two people determined not to fail again. Two people bonded by guilt and purpose. "What happens now?" Richard asked. "Now we build an airtight case. Make sure she never gets out. Never hurts another child. Never destroys another family." "What do you need from me?" Sarah pulled out another file, thinner, more recent. "Your housekeeper, Maria Santos. She's been documenting everything for months, taking videos, recording conversations. She's the reason we could move when we did. She's the reason Emma is alive. She's the hero in this story." Richard's chest tightened. Maria, the woman he barely noticed. The woman he took for granted. The woman he paid minimum wage to clean his house and raise his daughter while he built his empire. She'd been protecting Emma while he was too blind to see the danger. Where is she now? Safe house. Jennifer threatened to have her deported if she talked. We're protecting her. She's undocumented. Her cousin is undocumented. Jennifer knew, used it as leverage, turned Maria's love for her family into a weapon. "I need to see her. Need to thank her." "You will, but first, I need you to understand what we're up against." Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropped to a whisper. "Jennifer doesn't work alone. She has a partner, Dr. Marcus Webb, the child psychologist." The name hit Richard like a fist. Emma's therapist. The man Jennifer had insisted Emma see. The man who diagnosed behavioral problems that didn't exist. What's his role? He's the inside man, helps gaslight the husbands, documents that the children are disturbed, builds a case for why the father is unfit, creates a paper trail that stands up in court. After Robert Fletcher died, Webb testified that Fletcher's son was violent and dangerous. Made Jessica look like a victim trying to protect herself from an unstable child. The court believed him. He's very convincing. Sarah showed Richard another document. Webb's testimony in the Fletcher case. Professional, detailed, completely false. Webb gets a cut of the insurance money, 20%. He's been doing this with Jennifer for 8 years, 4 marriages, 4 paydays, millions of dollars. They're partners, a team, and they're very, very good at what they do. Richard thought about the therapy sessions, Emma coming home quieter each time, more withdrawn, more broken. Webb had been programming her, breaking her down, preparing her for whatever Jennifer had planned, documenting her supposed instability for court. Where is he now? We arrested him this morning, same time we wired you. He's already cooperating, telling us everything. He knows the evidence against him is overwhelming. He's trying to save himself, hoping for a reduced sentence, 20 years instead of life. Richard wanted to feel relieved, but mostly he felt rage. These people had conspired to destroy his family, had planned to kill him and Emma, had done it before and would have done it again and again until someone stopped them. What about the other victims? Fletcher's son, Davidson's daughter. Can they testify? Sarah's expression went dark. Fletcher's son died in the fire. Robert Jr., 7 years old. Jennifer locked him in his room before she set the fire. Made sure he couldn't escape. Made sure Robert would die trying to save him. 2 victims, double the tragedy, double the sympathy, double the insurance payout. She pulled out another photo, Rebecca Davidson. Current photo, not the smiling girl from before. This Rebecca looked empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left only the shell. Rebecca Davidson is in a psychiatric facility outside Boston. She hasn't spoken in 4 years. Whatever Jennifer did to her in those 3 months broke something fundamental. The doctors say it's trauma so deep her mind shut down completely. Built walls, hid behind silence, chose not to exist rather than face what she'd witnessed. Richard looked at Emma, imagined her silent, broken, lost in trauma so deep she couldn't find her way back. That could have been his daughter. Would have been if he'd waited any longer. If that anonymous email hadn't arrived. if Sarah hadn't been watching. I want to see Rebecca. Why? Because Emma shouldn't be the only one who gets saved. Because that girl deserves justice too. And maybe if she sees that we stop Jennifer, it might help her heal. Might give her permission to speak. Might show her the monster is caged. Sarah studied him, seeing something she liked, something she respected. You're a good man, Richard Donovan. Late to the party, but good. I'm a man who almost lost everything because he was too busy building an empire to notice his daughter was being tortured in his own home. You noticed eventually. That's more than most do. Most stay blind forever. She gathered the files, stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow starts the real work. We need your testimony. Emma's too eventually when she's ready. And we need to prepare for trial. Jennifer's lawyers will be vicious. They'll attack Emma, attack you, attack Maria. They'll make this ugly, make this painful, make you wish you'd never started it. Let them come. I've spent 20 years destroying people in court. Now I get to do it for something that actually matters. Sarah smiled, grim but genuine. Welcome to the fight, Mr. Donovan. The surveillance, Richard didn't go home that night. Home felt contaminated, poisoned by Jennifer's presence, tainted by memories of his blindness. Instead, he checked into a hotel, the Four Seasons, a suite with 2 bedrooms, security on the door. No one in or out without clearance. Emma woke at midnight, disoriented, frightened, her eyes wild in the darkness. Where are we? Where's Jennifer? Jennifer's gone, sweetheart. She can't hurt you anymore. She's in jail, behind bars, locked up. Is she coming back? No, never. I promise. But Emma didn't believe him. Richard could see it in her eyes. Children who'd been hurt learned not to trust promises, learned that adults lied, that safety was an illusion, that monsters always came back. He held her until she fell asleep again, then sat awake watching her breathe, memorizing her face, making silent vows he'd actually keep this time. I will never miss another moment, never choose work over you, never be blind again, never let anyone hurt you, never fail you, never abandon you, never be that father again. At 6 in the morning, Sarah Chen arrived with coffee and news. Jennifer made bail. Richard's blood went cold. The room temperature dropped. His hands clenched into fists. How? You arrested her for attempted murder, for conspiracy, for everything. Her lawyers argued she never actually attacked anyone, that the knife was for self-defense, that you were the aggressor, that she was afraid of you. The judge set bail at $2 million. She posted it an hour ago, walked out of jail smiling. Where is she now? Under surveillance, 24/7. But Richard, she's out. She's free. She's angry. And she knows you set her up. She knows Emma talked. She knows the walls are closing in. Richard looked at Emma, still sleeping in the next room. His daughter, his responsibility, his failure made flesh. What do we do? We finish building the case. Get her back in custody with charges that'll stick. But we need more evidence, more proof. Right now, it's your word against hers. And she's very, very good at playing victim. A knock at the door. Security checked, then admitted a small woman in her 50s, Maria Santos, the housekeeper, the hero Richard had never appreciated, the woman who'd saved his daughter while he counted money. Maria's eyes went immediately to Emma's room. Tears filled them. Real tears. Genuine emotion. Is she okay? Did that woman hurt her badly? Is she damaged forever? Richard stood, crossed to Maria, and did something he should have done years ago, something he should have done every day. He hugged her. Thank you for protecting my daughter, for being bright when I was blind, for being a mother when I failed to be a father. Maria cried against his shoulder, her small body shaking. I should have told you sooner, should have made you listen, should have forced you to see, but she threatened my family. My cousin Jose, he's undocumented. She said she'd call immigration, have him deported. Destroyed. I was so scared, so weak. You weren't weak. You were human, and you saved Emma's life. You're the hero in this story, not me. Sarah cleared her throat, professional, focused. Maria has been recording Jennifer for 6 months. We need to review the footage, decide what we can use in court. What will survive? Cross-examination. They spent the next 3 hours watching videos on Maria's phone. Months of abuse condensed into horrifying clips, each one worse than the last. Each one proof of Richard's failure. Jennifer locking Emma in closets, dark closets, for hours. While Emma screamed and begged and eventually went silent, Jennifer withholding food, forcing Emma to watch her eat, taunting her with hunger. Jennifer whispering threats that cut deeper than knives. If you tell your father, I'll make sure you never see him again. I'll have you committed, locked up, drugged, forgotten. Your mother didn't want you. That's why she died. She chose death over being your mother. You're worthless, stupid, ugly. Nobody loves you. Nobody ever will. Richard watched until he couldn't anymore. Then he excused himself to the bathroom and vomited. Not from weakness, from rage, from the realization of how completely he'd failed, how thoroughly he'd abandoned his daughter to a monster. When he returned, Sarah was making notes. This is good, damning, but we need more. We need Jennifer to confess on tape, to threaten Emma where we can prove intent, where there's no ambiguity, no room for reasonable doubt. How do we do that? We set a trap, make Jennifer think she's winning, that you're backing down, that you're willing to negotiate, give her confidence, then catch her when she makes her move. Richard understood immediately. He'd use similar tactics in court. Lull the opponent into false security, let them think they're winning, then strike when they're exposed. What do you need me to do? Call Jennifer. Tell her you want to talk, to negotiate. Make her think you're willing to drop charges in exchange for her leaving quietly, offering money, offering an out. Will she believe it? She's arrogant. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. She thinks you're weak. She thinks men are easy to manipulate. Yes, she'll believe it. Richard made the call, put it on speaker so Sarah could hear, so Maria could witness, so there would be no ambiguity about what came next. Jennifer answered on the first ring, her voice cold, calculated, victorious. Richard, finally ready to be reasonable? Finally ready to accept reality? I want this to end, for Emma's sake, for everyone's sake. Can we meet, talk like adults, find a solution? What's there to talk about? You tried to have me arrested. You failed. Now I'm going to destroy you in court. Take everything, including Emma. She's my daughter legally. And you're an absent father, a workaholic, a failure. The court will see that. Jennifer, please. I know things got out of hand, but we can fix this. We can make this go away. Come to the house tonight. We'll discuss terms. Find common ground. Silence on the line. Jennifer thinking, calculating, planning her next move. What kind of terms? Money, enough to disappear, to start over somewhere else. In exchange, you sign away all rights to Emma. We get the adoption nullified. You walk away clean, rich, free. More silence. Then Jennifer laughed, bitter, triumphant. The laugh of someone who thinks they've already won. You think you can buy me off after everything? After I've invested 2 years in this? You're even stupider than I thought. I'm trying to protect my daughter. Name your price. Anything. Just leave us alone. My price is watching you suffer, is taking everything you love, is making Emma understand that her father chose work over her, that he's weak, pathetic, unable to protect her from anything real. The cruelty in her voice. The pleasure she took in threatening a child. It was all being recorded, all admissible in court, all proof of who she really was. So you won't negotiate? Oh, I'll negotiate, but not with you, with Emma. When I have custody after you're dead, when she has no one left but me, when she's completely alone and broken and desperate, then we'll have a very interesting conversation about her future, about her value, about whether she lives or dies. There it was, the threat, the confession, everything they needed, clear, unambiguous, recorded. Richard forced his voice to stay calm, professional, like he was negotiating a contract instead of his daughter's life. I'll see you in court then. You'll see me sooner than that, much sooner. Sweet dreams, Richard. She hung up. Sarah stopped the recording, smiled grimly. victory mixed with disgust. That's enough. Threatening a child, admitting intent to harm, talking about custody after your death. Combined with Maria's videos, Webb's testimony, and the other victims, we have her. We can win this. How long until trial? 6 months, maybe 8. She'll fight every step, delay, peel, try every trick, but eventually she'll go to prison for the rest of her life. Richard should have felt relieved, vindicated, victorious, but all he felt was hollow. Justice was coming, but it couldn't undo the damage, couldn't erase Emma's trauma, couldn't give back the childhood Jennifer had stolen, couldn't make Richard a better father retroactively. What about Emma? How do we help her heal? Therapy, real therapy, not whatever Webb was doing. Time, patience, consistency, and most importantly, you being present, showing her that not all adults are monsters, that her father will actually protect her now. That promises means something. I will, whatever it takes, however long it takes. Good, because the hardest part is just beginning, the conspiracy. 3 weeks passed. Richard didn't return to work, didn't answer calls from clients, didn't check email. For the first time in 20 years, he chose family over career, chose presence over profit, chose being over doing. He and Emma stayed at the hotel, slowly building trust, slowly learning to be father and daughter again, slowly discovering who they were without fear as the foundation. Emma was afraid of everything: loud noises, closed doors, being left alone even for a minute. She woke screaming from nightmares, refused to eat unless Richard tasted the food first, flinched when anyone moved too quickly, checked every room for Jennifer before entering. The damage ran deep, deeper than Richard had imagined, deeper than therapy could easily reach. But there were good moments too, small victories that felt like miracles. One morning, Emma laughed at a cartoon. The sound shocked them both. It had been so long since Richard had heard his daughter laugh, so long since joy had been possible. Another day, she asked if they could get ice cream, a normal request, a childlike want. Progress measured in scoops of chocolate. The therapist, Dr. Patricia Yang, came daily, patient, understanding, helping Emma process the trauma without forcing her to relive it, teaching her that feelings were valid, that fear made sense, that healing was possible. She's resilient, Patricia told Richard. Children are. Their brains are plastic, adaptable. But she needs stability, consistency. She needs to know you're not going anywhere, that this isn't temporary, that you've actually changed. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. What about work? Your firm, your career? Those things pulled you away before. What makes this time different? I'm selling the firm, retiring at 52, spending the rest of my life being the father I should have been from the start. Patricia smiled, approval in her eyes. That's the best therapy you could give her. Your presence, your consistency, your actual love instead of guilty money. In the 3rd week, Sarah Chen called with news that changed everything. Marcus Webb is dead. Richard went cold. The hotel room temperature seemed to drop. How? Prison fight, or that's what it looks like. Shanked to the neck. Bled out before guards could respond. But I think it was a hit. Someone wanted him silenced before he could testify, before he could tell everything he knew. Jennifer? She's still under surveillance, hasn't left her lawyer's office in days, but she has connections, money, resources. She could have arranged it from inside. One phone call, one payment, one dead witness. What does this mean for the case? It's harder without Webb's testimony. His written statement helps. But defense lawyers will argue it's unreliable, that he was coerced, that he was lying to save himself. We can still win, but it's harder now. Richard felt the old familiar anger, the courtroom fighter in him waking up, the part of him that knew how to destroy opponents, that knew how to win at any cost. Then we make sure they hear the truth, all of it, every victim, every lie, every death she's caused. That's the plan. But Richard, you need to prepare Emma. She'll have to testify. Tell the jury what Jennifer did to her. Can she handle that? Can you ask that of her? Richard thought about his 5-year-old daughter, still afraid to sleep alone, still jumping at shadows. The idea of putting her on a witness stand, making her relive the abuse in front of strangers, made him sick. She's 5 years old. I know, but she's the only one who can speak to what Jennifer did. The only living victim who can talk. Rebecca Davidson still hasn't spoken. What about Rebecca? Can I see her? Maybe if she knows Jennifer is caught, she'll speak. Maybe she's been waiting for permission. Sarah arranged the visit, a psychiatric facility outside Boston. Clean, professional, depressing in its institutional efficiency. Rebecca Davison sat in a common room, staring at nothing. 12 years old, but she looked ancient, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left only the shell, like a house with no one home. Her grandmother sat beside her, an older woman worn down by grief and helplessness, by 4 years of silence, by 4 years of doctors saying there was nothing more they could do. Mrs. Davidson, Richard said gently, I'm Richard Donovan. My daughter was also hurt by Jennifer Morrison, but we stopped her. She's in custody, awaiting trial. The grandmother looked up, hope flickering in her eyes like a candle in wind. You stopped her? Yes, she can't hurt anyone anymore. Will she go to prison? If I have anything to say about it, yes, for life, forever. She'll never hurt another child. Mrs. Davison started crying. Relief and pain mixed together. 4 years of waiting, 4 years of wondering if justice would ever come. Richard knelt beside Rebecca, looked into her empty eyes, searching for any sign of the girl who used to be there. Rebecca, my name is Richard. I have a daughter named Emma. She's 5. Jennifer hurt her too, but Emma is safe now. And you're safe. Jennifer can't hurt anyone anymore. We have proof, evidence, testimony. We're going to put her away forever. Nothing, no response, no recognition, just empty eyes staring at nothing. But then, so faint, Richard almost missed it. A single tear rolled down on Rebecca's cheek. She'd heard him. Somewhere deep inside, she was still there. Still listening, still hoping. Rebecca, I know you're scared. I know it feels like she's still out there, still dangerous, still watching. But she's not. We stopped her. And you never have to be afraid again. You're safe now. Really safe, I promise. Rebecca's hand moved, just slightly, reaching toward Richard, a movement so small it might have been imagination. But it wasn't. He took her hand, held it gently, felt the faintest squeeze in return. You don't have to talk, not until you're ready. But when you are, when you want to tell someone what happened, I'll be here, and I'll make sure everyone listens. I'll make sure they believe you. I'll make sure Jennifer pays for what she did. Mrs. Davidson sobbed openly now, watching her granddaughter respond to another human being for the first time in 4 years. Richard stayed with Rebecca for an hour, talking quietly, telling her about Emma, about how they stopped Jennifer, about justice coming, about safety being real. And slowly, incrementally, Rebecca began to wake up, not speaking yet, but present, listening, responding with small gestures, hand squeezes, eye contact, the barest hint of a smile. Progress, real progress, hope where there had been none. 2 days later, Sarah called again. Rebecca spoke. Richard's heart stopped. The world paused. What did she say? She told her therapist everything. About the fire, about how Jennifer locked her father in his bedroom, about the gasoline she smelled, about watching her father die while Jennifer stood outside making sure he couldn't escape, about Jennifer threatening to come back and finish the job if Rebecca ever told. Oh God, that's why she stayed silent for 4 years. Pure terror. But you gave her permission to speak. You showed her the monster was caged. You gave her hope. Richard sat down, the weight of it overwhelming, the responsibility crushing. What does this mean for the trial? It means we have another witness, another victim, another murder to charge Jennifer with. It means we can prove a pattern. Show the jury this wasn't a one-time thing. This is who Jennifer is, a serial killer who targets families, a predator who's been doing this for years. Will Rebecca have to testify? Eventually, but we'll get her statement on record first, video deposition. She won't have to face Jennifer in court unless she chooses to, unless she wants to. And Emma, Sarah's voice gentled, understanding the weight of what she was asking. Emma will still need to testify, But knowing Rebecca found her voice might help, might give her courage, might show her that speaking up matters, that it leads to justice, that it protects other children. Richard thought about his daughter, about asking a 5-year-old to be brave in a courtroom, to face the monster who'd terrorized her, to speak truth to power. It wasn't fair, wasn't right, but it was necessary. I'll talk to her, prepare her, make sure she knows I'll be right there with her, that she's not alone, that she's safe. That's all you can do. Be present. Be her father, actually be there instead of just existing in the same space. The next month passed in preparation, lawyers, depositions, evidence review. Richard threw himself into the case with the same intensity he'd once reserved for corporate mergers. But now the stakes were real, personal, his daughter's life, Rebecca's justice, stopping a monster who had destroyed too many families. Jennifer remained free on bail, under surveillance but still out there, still smiling that cold smile, still convinced she'd win, still believing she was smarter than everyone else, still planning her next move. The preliminary hearing arrived. Richard sat in the courtroom, Emma beside him. The little girl held his hand so tight her knuckles went white, so tight it hurt. Richard didn't let go. Jennifer entered with her lawyers, designer suit, perfect makeup, playing the victim beautifully. When she saw Emma, she smiled, that same sweet smile she'd used for 2 years. But Emma saw through it now, saw the monster underneath, saw the truth Richard had been too blind to see. The prosecutor called Maria Santos. The housekeeper took the stand. Nervous but determined, she told her story, about the months of abuse she witnessed, about the threats Jennifer made, about the videos she'd recorded, about choosing Emma's safety over her own. Jennifer's lawyers attacked, tried to discredit her, suggested she was lying for money, for revenge, for immigration benefits, for 15 minutes of fame. But Maria held firm, showed the videos, let the evidence speak. The courtroom watched footage of Jennifer abusing Emma, heard the threats, saw the cruelty. Several jurors looked sick. One was crying. Jennifer's mask slipped for just a second. Richard saw the flash of rage in her eyes, the realization that this wasn't going according to plan. Then Rebecca Davidson took the stand. The courtroom went completely silent. This 12-year-old girl who hadn't spoken in 4 years, who everyone assumed was permanently broken, who Jennifer thought she'd destroyed forever. Rebecca swore to tell the truth. And then she spoke. "My name is Rebecca Davidson. Jennifer Morrison murdered my father. She locked him in his room and set our house on fire. I watched him die. I heard him screaming. I smelled him burning. And then she told me if I ever told anyone, she'd come back and kill me too. So I stayed quiet for 4 years because I was too afraid." She looked directly at Jennifer. No fear now, just anger, just truth. "But I'm not afraid anymore because Mr. Donovan stopped you. And now everyone knows what you are, a monster, a murderer, and you're never going to hurt anyone ever again." The courtroom erupted. Jennifer's lawyers objected. The judge called for order. But the damage was done. Rebecca had spoken, and everyone had heard. The preliminary hearing ended with the judge denying all motions to dismiss. The trial would proceed. All charges would stand. Jennifer was led away in handcuffs, bail revoked. No more freedom, no more chances. As she passed Richard and Emma, she leaned in close, whispered so only they could hear. "This isn't over. I'll find a way. I always do." But Richard didn't flinch, didn't react, just held Emma tighter and watched the monster get dragged back to her cage. Outside the courtroom, Sarah Chen approached. "Good job, all of you, Rebecca especially. That took incredible courage. What happens now?" "Now we prepare for trial. We make sure every piece of evidence is perfect, every witness is ready, and we put Jennifer Morrison away for the rest of her life." Richard nodded. The war was just beginning, but for the first time he believed they could win. Emma tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home now?" Richard knelt beside her. "Where do you want home to be, sweetheart?" Emma thought about it, then said something that broke his heart and healed it at the same time. "Anywhere you are." Richard picked her up, held her close. then home is wherever we're together, and I'm not leaving, not ever again. When they walked out of the courthouse into cold Boston air, behind them the legal system ground forward, depositions and motions and preparations for trial. But ahead of them, something else waited, a future, a chance to heal, a family learning to trust again. It wouldn't be easy. Emma's nightmares wouldn't vanish overnight. The trauma wouldn't disappear with a verdict. But they had time now, time to rebuild, time to become the father and daughter they should have been all along. And this time, Richard wasn't going to waste a single moment. 6 months can feel like forever when you're waiting for justice. 6 months of therapy sessions and sleepless nights. 6 months of Emma waking up screaming. 6 months of learning to be a father instead of just a provider. 6 months of discovering that presence mattered more than presence. That time mattered more than money. Richard Donovan sold his law firm in March, walked away from 20 years of building an empire. His partners called him crazy. His colleagues whispered about breakdown and early retirement, about a man who'd lost his mind. Let them talk. He didn't care anymore what anyone thought. Didn't care about reputation or legacy or any of it, except Emma. Her opinion was the only one that mattered now. They moved out of the penthouse. Too many bad memories soaked into those walls. Too many ghosts haunting those rooms. Instead, Richard bought a house in Brookline. Nothing flashy, just a normal home with a word and a swing set and neighbors who weren't millionaires. Neighbors who waved hello, who invited them to barbecues, who treated them like people instead of symbols of wealth. Emma picked out her own room. Yellow walls, white furniture, nothing like the pink prison Jennifer had created. She filled it with books and stuffed animals and drawings she made in therapy. Evidence of healing, evidence of childhood slowly returning. And slowly, incrementally, she began to heal. Patricia Yang came 3 times a week, patient, understanding, helping Emma find words for feelings too big for a 5-year-old to process, teaching her that trauma didn't define her, that she was more than what had happened to her. The nightmares are normal, Patricia told Richard after one session. So is the fear, the anxiety. She's been living with a predator for 2 years. Her brain learned to stay in constant survival mode. It takes time to teach it safety again, to convince it the danger has passed. How much time? Years probably, maybe forever. Trauma doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't just go away because we want it to. But she's young, resilient. With the right support, she can have a full, happy life. Richard made that his mission, the right support, whatever Emma needed, however long it took. No shortcuts, no easy answers, just presence and patience and actual love. Maria Santos moved into the guest house behind their new home, not as an employee anymore, as family. The woman who'd saved Emma's life deserved more than a paycheck, deserved recognition, deserved honor. Mr. Donovan, you don't have to do this, Maria protested when he offered. Yes, I do. And stop calling me Mr. Donovan. It's Richard. You're family now. You saved my daughter. You're a hero. Maria's cousin Jose, the undocumented immigrant Jennifer had threatened to report, Richard hired the best immigration lawyer in Boston, started the citizenship process, fixed what he could, paid what needed paying, used his connections for something good. Rebecca Davidson and her grandmother visited twice a month. The 2 girls, both survivors, formed a bond that transcended age. They understood each other in ways no one else could, shared a language of trauma, of survival, of slow healing. Rebecca was talking now, not a lot, not easily, but the words came, slowly rebuilding a voice Jennifer had tried to silence forever. Thank you, Mrs. Davidson told Richard during one visit, tears in her eyes, gratitude in her voice. You gave us our granddaughter back. You gave us hope when we had none. Rebecca saved herself. I just helped her see she was safe enough to try. Now, in September, the trial finally arrived. Suffolk County Superior Court. Judge Margaret Chen presiding. No relation to Detective Sarah Chen, but equally fierce in her pursuit of justice. Equally committed to protecting children. Equally disgusted by what Jennifer had done. The courtroom filled with spectators. Media. Families of Jennifer's other victims. Harold Chen's sister. Robert Fletcher's parents. Paul Davidson's brother. All of them wanting to see the monster finally caged. All of them waiting for justice delayed, but not denied. Jennifer entered in an orange jumpsuit. No designer clothes today, no perfect makeup. 6 months in jail had stripped away some of the polish, but not the arrogance. She walked with her head high, confident, still believing she'd find a way out, still convinced she was smarter than everyone else. Her legal team was impressive. 3 lawyers from one of Boston's top firms, expensive, ruthless, hired with money she'd stolen from dead husbands, blood money buying the best defense money could buy. The lead attorney, Marcus Whitfield, was a legend, 70 years old, never lost a murder case in 40 years. He'd gotten mobsters acquitted, made serial killers look sympathetic. If anyone could save Jennifer, it was him. Richard sat in the front row with Emma beside him, Sarah Chen on his other side, Maria behind them, Rebecca and her grandmother 2 rows back. A family, not by blood, but by shared trauma, by the simple fact that they'd all survived Jennifer Morrison and refused to let her win. The judge entered, everyone rose. Court was called to order. The machinery of justice grinding forward. The prosecutor, Elizabeth Hayes, stood, mid-40s, sharp, experienced. She'd been preparing this case for 6 months, knew every detail, every piece of evidence, every weakness in the defense. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the next few weeks you will hear a story that seems impossible. A story of a woman who has made a career out of marrying wealthy men, destroying their families, and profiting from their deaths. She walked to the jury box, made eye contact with each juror, establishing connection, building trust. Jennifer Morrison has used many names: Jessica Martinez, Julia Mendez, Jane Mitchell, but the person behind those names has always been the same: a predator, a con artist, and a murderer. Marcus Whitfield objected immediately. The judge sustained. Elizabeth adjusted without missing a beat. An alleged murderer, but by the end of this trial, the evidence will prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Jennifer Morrison is responsible for the deaths of at least 4 people, the abuse of multiple children, and the systematic destruction of families across this country for nearly a decade. She returned to her table, pulled out photographs, held them up for the jury to see. Harold Chen, Robert Fletcher Jr., Paul Davidson, 4 lives ended, millions of dollars stolen, families destroyed, and one woman connecting them all: Jennifer Morrison, the defendant sitting before you today. Elizabeth sat down. First round to the prosecution. The jury already looked disturbed, already looked convinced, but the trial had just begun. Marcus Whitfield stood for the defense. He moved slowly, used his age like a weapon, the kindly grandfather figure. Reasonable, sympathetic, trustworthy. Ladies and gentlemen, my client is innocent. This entire case is built on the vindictive accusations of a man who couldn't accept that his new wife wanted a divorce. Richard Donovan is powerful, connected, used to getting his way. When Jennifer tried to leave him, he used his resources to destroy her, to frame her, to turn his own failures as a father into her crimes as a mother. Richard's jaw clenched. The lies came so easily, so smoothly, so convincingly. Whitfield continued, his voice gentle, grandfatherly, designed to soothe and persuade. The so-called evidence you'll see has been manipulated, taken out of context, edited to make Jennifer look guilty. The witnesses have been coached, paid, pressured to testify against her. This is a witch hunt, a modern-day Salem, and my client is the innocent woman being burned at the stake. He returned to his seat. At the end of this trial, you will see the truth. Jennifer is not a monster. She's a victim, and I'm asking you to give her justice. The opening statements finished. Judge Chen called a recess. The battle lines drawn. The war begun. Emma's testimony. 3 days into the trial, Elizabeth Hayes called her most important witness. The prosecution calls Emma Donovan. The courtroom went silent. Everyone knew this moment would come, but seeing it happen felt different. Worse. A 5-year-old girl walking to the witness stand to testify against the monster who tortured her. A child forced to be brave in a world built for adults. Emma wore a yellow dress, her favorite color. Maria had helped her pick it out that morning. She looked tiny in the witness chair. A child in a world built for adults. Small, vulnerable, brave beyond measure. The judge spoke gently, her voice soft, maternal. "Hello, Emma. My name is Judge Chen. Do you know why you are here today?" Emma nodded, her voice small but clear. "To tell the truth about Jennifer." "That's right. And do you promise to tell the truth? The whole truth?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good girl. If you need a break at any time, you just let me know, okay?" "Okay." Elizabeth approached slowly, non-threatening. She'd worked with Emma for months, built trust, prepared her for this moment, taught her that her voice mattered, that speaking up protected other children. "Emma, can you tell the jury who Jennifer Morrison is?" Emma's voice was small but clear, steady despite her fear. "She was my stepmom. My daddy married her after my real mom died. And when Jennifer first came to live with you, how did she treat you?" "Nice. She was really nice at first. She played with me and read me stories and made my daddy smile. I liked her then." "When did that change?" Emma's hands twisted in her lap, a gesture of anxiety Patricia had taught Richard to recognize. "After they got married, after she adopted me, then she was only nice when daddy was home. When he left, she was different." "What happened when your daddy wasn't home?" Emma looked at Richard. He nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart. It's okay. I'm right here." "She was mean. She yelled at me. She said I was bad, that my real mommy didn't want me. That's why she died. She said mommy drove her car into a tree to get away from me." Several jurors shifted uncomfortably. The cruelty of telling a child her mother chose to die rather than be with her. The psychological torture of it. "Did Jennifer ever hurt you physically? Touch you in ways that hurt?" Emma nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "She hit me sometimes, and she grabbed my arms really hard. It hurt. And she locked me in my closet when I was bad. For hours. In the dark, I was so scared." "How often did she lock you in the closet?" "A lot. Sometimes all afternoon. It was dark and I was scared, but she said if I cried, she'd leave me there all night. So I tried to be quiet. I tried to be good." Elizabeth showed Emma a photo, one of Maria's hidden camera shots. Emma with bruises on her arms. Clear, undeniable, evidence that couldn't be explained away. "Is this you?" "Yes." "Where did these bruises come from?" "Jennifer grabbed me. I spilled juice and she got really mad. She said I did it on purpose to make her look bad, but I didn't. I was just clumsy." "Did you do it on purpose?" "No, I would never, but Jennifer said I was lying. She always said I was lying, even when I told the truth." Elizabeth pulled out another piece of evidence, the audio recording from the phone call, the one where Jennifer threatened Emma, where the mask came off completely. "Emma, I'm going to play a recording. I want you to tell me if you recognize the voices." She hit play. Jennifer's voice filled the courtroom. Cold, cruel, unmistakable. "Your daddy is sending you away, Emma. You know why? Because you're a bad girl. Nobody wants you." Emma's voice crying. "That's not true." "It is true. Uriel once didn't want you either. That's why she died. But don't worry, before you go to boarding school, we're going to have a little accident, just like your mommy." The recording stopped. The jury sat frozen, the horror on their faces evident, undeniable. Several were crying. One looked like he wanted to vomit. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a childlike gesture that made her seem even smaller, even more vulnerable. "That's Jennifer, talking to me in my room. She said things like that all the time, every day." "What did she mean by accident?" "She meant she was going to kill me. Like she killed other people's daddies, she told me. She said I was going to have an accident and then daddy would be quo, but then he'd forget about me." Marcus Whitfield objected, hearsay, leading. The judge sustained some of it, but the damage was done. The jury had heard Jennifer threatening to murder a child in her own words. Recorded, preserved, undeniable. Elizabeth continued for another 20 minutes. Gentle questions, building the case piece by piece. Emma's testimony painting a picture of systematic abuse, of a predator who'd tormented a grieving child for 2 years, of evil disguised as motherhood. Finally, Elizabeth finished. "Thank you, Emma. You're very brave, very strong. Your daddy should be proud." Then came the hard part, cross-examination. The moment Richard had been dreading. Marcus Whitfield stood, approached slowly. That grandfatherly smile in place, designed to disarm, to comfort, to manipulate. Hello, Emma. I'm Mr. Whitfield. I just have a few questions for you. Nothing scary, just some things I need to understand. Emma looked terrified. Richard wanted to run up there, grab her, take her away from this. But he stayed in his seat, stayed still. Let his daughter be brave. Let her find her voice. Let her speak truth to power. Emma, you love your father very much, don't you? Yes. And you'd do anything to make him happy, I guess. Your father doesn't like Jennifer anymore, does he? No, because she hurt me. But your father has told you Jennifer hurt you, right? He's explained to you what happened, helped you understand? Emma frowned, confused. I don't understand what you mean. I'm asking if your father has coached you, told you what to say in court, helped you practice these answers. Elizabeth objected. Judge sustained. But Whitfield had planted the seed, had suggested to the jury that Emma might be lying, might be manipulated. Emma, isn't it possible you've misunderstood some things? That Jennifer was trying to discipline you, and you interpreted it as meanness? That she was being a mother, and you saw her as a monster? No, she was mean, really mean. Not like a mommy, like a monster. Children sometimes exaggerate, don't they? When they're upset, when they want attention. I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling the truth. Everything I said is true. But you're only 5 years old. 5-year-olds don't always understand adult situations. Maybe Jennifer was strict because she cared about you, wanted you to behave properly, wanted you to grow up right. Emma's voice got stronger, louder, more certain. She locked me in closets. She said my mommy didn't want me. She said she was going to kill me. That's not caring. That's not being strict. That's being a monster. That's being evil. The courtroom rippled with emotion. This 5-year-old child facing down a legendary defense attorney, not backing down, not changing her story, not letting him twist her truth into his lies. Whitfield tried a different approach, more aggressive now. Emma, your father is very rich, isn't he? I guess. And Jennifer wanted some of that money when she divorced your father. That made your father angry, didn't it? Jennifer hurt me. That's why Daddy's angry, not because of money, because she was mean to me. Or maybe your father is using you to hurt Jennifer, to get revenge because she wanted to leave him, to punish her for not wanting to be his wife anymore. Emma stood up in the witness chair, her small voice carried across the silent courtroom. Loud, clear, certain. My daddy didn't make me say anything. Jennifer is bad. She hurt me, and she hurt other kids, and she killed people, and you're trying to make everyone believe her lies. But I'm telling the truth, and you can't make me stop. You can't make me be quiet. You can't make me scared anymore. Judge Chen called for order, but Emma wasn't done, wasn't finished, had more to say. I was scared to talk, scared Jennifer would come back and hurt me more. But then Daddy showed me she was in jail, that she couldn't hurt me anymore. And Rebecca told me about her daddy dying, and I knew I had to be brave, had to tell everyone so Jennifer can't hurt anyone else ever again. So other kids don't get hurt, so other daddies don't die. She sat back down, tears streaming down her face, but her chin high, defiant, victorious. Marcus Whitfield had no more questions. Emma had destroyed his strategy with simple, devastating honesty, with the unshakable truth of a child who'd lived through hell and survived. The judge excused her. Richard met her at the witness stand, picked her up, carried her out of the courtroom while she sobbed against his shoulder, while the jury watched, while Jennifer's mask finally cracked completely. I did it, Daddy. I told the truth, like you said. You did, baby. You were so brave, so strong. I'm so proud of you. So proud. In the hallway, Sarah Chen waited. That was incredible. She just won the case, no question. That jury will never forget what they just saw. The verdict, the trial lasted 3 more weeks. Witness after witness, expert after expert. Evidence piled on evidence until the truth was undeniable. Maria describing what she'd seen, the abuse, the cruelty, the systematic torture of a child. Detective Sarah Chen explaining the investigation, the pattern, The other victims. The decade of destruction. Forensic accountants tracking Jennifer's financial crimes across multiple states, showing the money trail, the insurance payouts. The stolen fortunes. Rebecca Davison testified. 12 years old now, stronger than she'd been at the preliminary hearing. She told the jury about watching her father burn to death, about Jennifer standing outside making sure he couldn't escape, about 4 years of silence born from terror, born from a threat that seemed eternal. The defense tried to break her, failed. Rebecca had survived too much to be intimidated by lawyers, had endured too much to be frightened by questions. Harold Chen's sister testified about bruises she'd seen on Harold before he died, about Jennifer isolating him from family, about the convenient timing of his fall down carpeted stairs he'd climbed safely for 30 years. Expert witnesses explained the pattern, the targeting of wealthy widowers, the systematic abuse of their children, the financial motive, the planning, the cold, calculated destruction of families, the signature of a serial predator. And through it all, Jennifer sat silent, that perfect mask in place, playing the victim, the wronged woman, the innocent accused. But the jury saw through her. Emma's testimony had cracked the facade. Everything after just confirmed what they already knew. The monster was real, and she was sitting 20 feet away. Finally, closing arguments arrived. Elizabeth Hayes stood before the jury one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard 3 weeks of testimony, seen videos, heard recordings, listened to survivors. The evidence is overwhelming. Jennifer Morrison is a serial predator who has destroyed families across this country for a decade. She walked to where Jennifer sat. She married Harold Chen and killed him for $8 million. She married Robert Fletcher and killed him and his 7-year-old son for $12 million. She married Paul Davidson and killed him, traumatizing his daughter so severely she didn't speak for 4 years. Elizabeth returned to the jury, and then she came to Boston, married Richard Donovan, adopted his daughter Emma, and spent 2 years torturing that child while planning to kill both Emma and Richard for $35 million. That was her plan, that was her goal, and she almost succeeded. Her voice rang with conviction. The defense wants you to believe this is all a misunderstanding, a vindictive ex-husband, false accusations. But you heard Emma, you heard Rebecca, you saw the videos, you listened to the recordings. Jennifer Morrison's own words condemn her. Her own actions prove her guilt. Her own victims demand justice. She sat down. Marcus Whitfield gave his closing, argued reasonable doubt, suggested the evidence was manufactured, painted Richard as a vengeful ex who'd orchestrated an elaborate frame job. But his heart wasn't in it. Even legendary lawyers can't defend the indefensible once a 5-year-old calls them out for protecting a monster. Once the truth becomes undeniable, once evil shows its face. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Richard spent those hours in a private room with Emma, playing games, reading stories, pretending everything was normal, pretending his entire world wasn't hanging on the decision of 12 strangers. Finally, the buzzer. The jury had reached a verdict. Everyone returned to the courtroom. The tension thick enough to choke on, thick enough to drown in. Judge Chen took her seat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood, an older man, retired teacher. He'd cried during Emma's testimony, had looked at Jennifer with pure disgust. We have, Your Honor. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Harold Chen, how do you find? Guilty. Jennifer's face went white, the mask finally cracking, reality setting in. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Robert Fletcher, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Robert Fletcher Jr., how do you find? Guilty. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Paul Davidson, how do you find? Guilty. The foreman continued through 15 more counts. Child abuse, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy, guilty, 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 guilty. Every single charge. Jennifer finally broke, screamed at the jury, called them idiots, threatened them. The mask completely gone, the monster fully revealed. Nothing left but rage and hatred and evil exposed. Security dragged her from the courtroom, still screaming, still threatening, still believing somehow she'd find a way out. But there was no way out. Not anymore. Not ever. Judge Chen set sentencing for 2 weeks later. But everyone knew what it would be. Life, without possibility of parole, in a maximum security prison. Forever. Outside the courtroom, Richard stood with Emma in his arms. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But he ignored all of it. He just held his daughter, felt her breathe, felt her alive and safe and free. Is it over, Daddy? Yes, sweetheart, it's over. She can never hurt you again. Never, I promise. Emma hugged him tighter. Can we go home now? Yeah, baby, we can go home. Aftermath and healing. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Chen showed no mercy. Jennifer Morrison, you have been found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of child abuse, 2 counts of attempted murder, and multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Your crimes span a decade and have destroyed countless lives. You targeted vulnerable people, exploited their grief, and murdered them for profit. You tortured children. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no humanity. Jennifer stood silent, defeated, broken, the monster caged. I hereby sentence you to 4 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison. And may God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. Jennifer was led away. Richard watched her go, felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, just relief that it was finally over, that Emma was finally safe, that justice had finally come. Emma didn't attend the sentencing. She was at home with Maria, playing in the yard, being a normal 5-year-old for the first time in 2 years, being a child, being free. That's where Richard wanted to be. Not watching Jennifer Morrison disappear into the prison system, but with his daughter, being present, being the father he should have been from the start. He left the courthouse, drove home, found Emma on the swing set, Maria pushing her, both of them laughing, the sound of Emma's laughter, pure joy, no fear underneath it, no trauma dampening it, just a child being happy. Richard stood and watched, memorizing this moment, this victory that mattered more than any case he'd ever won. Emma saw him, jumped off the swing, ran to him. Daddy, Maria says we can get ice cream. Then let's get ice cream. They went to the local shop. Nothing fancy, just a neighborhood place with good flavors and friendly staff. Emma got chocolate. Richard got vanilla. Maria got a strawberry. They sat outside in October sunshine, eating ice cream, talking about nothing important. School, friends, the new dog Emma wanted. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. Epilogue. 1 year later. Autumn returned to Boston, leaves turning gold and red, air crisp with the promise of winter. Richard stood in his backyard watching Emma play. She was 6 now, taller, stronger, confident in ways she'd never been before. The nightmares had faded, the fear had lessened, the healing had happened, slowly, painfully. But really, Rebecca was visiting. The 2 girls ran through fallen leaves laughing, building forts, playing elaborate games only children understood. Mrs. Davidson sat beside Richard on the porch. Thank you again for everything you've done for Rebecca, for giving us our granddaughter back. She saved Emma too, by being brave enough to speak. They saved each other. Maria brought out lemonade. She'd become part of their small family, an honorary grandmother to both girls. Her cousin Jose had gotten his green card last month. Another victory, another life saved. Sarah Chen arrived with her own daughter, 14 now. The girls all played together, a small community of survivors, of healers, of people who refused to let darkness win. The backyard filled with people, not a huge crowd, just the ones who mattered, the survivors, the fighters, the family they'd built from ashes. Richard thought about Jennifer, locked in a cell, alone, probably still believing she was the victim, still convinced she'd done nothing wrong. He didn't hate her anymore, didn't feel anything for her. She was irrelevant. A chapter closed, a monster defeated. What mattered was here, Now, Emma's laughter, Rebecca's healing, the family they'd created, the life they were building. Emma ran up to the porch, breathless, happy. Daddy, can Rebecca sleep over? If her grandmother says it's okay. Mrs. Davidson nodded. Emma hugged him, quick and fierce. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, Princess. She ran back to Rebecca, the two girls disappearing into their imaginary world. As evening fell, Richard carried a sleeping Emma to bed. She stirred when he tucked her in. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart. I had fun today. Me too. Are you happy? The question caught him off guard. Yes, Emma. I'm very happy. Good, because when you're happy, I'm not scared anymore. She rolled over, sleep in seconds. Richard stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, marveling at her resilience, her capacity for joy despite everything she'd endured. He thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, the workaholic attorney who measured success in billable hours, who thought money equaled happiness, who missed his wife's death because he was in London closing a deal. That man was gone. Good riddance. In his place stood someone better, a father, a friend, a man who understood what actually mattered. Richard walked downstairs. His phone buzzed. An email from the foundation. They'd helped their 50th family this month. 50 families escaping abuse, finding safety, getting therapy, rebuilding their lives. Sarah's legacy and Jennifer's opposite. Where Jennifer destroyed, the foundation healed. Richard closed the email, locked the doors, turned off the lights. Upstairs, Emma slept peacefully. No nightmares tonight, just dreams of playground adventures and friendship bracelets and all the normal things 6-year-olds dreamed about. Richard checked on her one more time, kissed her forehead, whispered a promise into the darkness. I'm here. I'm staying. You're safe. Always. In his own room, Richard looked at the photo on his nightstand. Sarah, his first wife. I'm doing it, he told her picture. Being present, being the father you wanted me to be. The father Emma deserves. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. He set the photo down, turned off his light. Somewhere across the city, Jennifer Morrison sat in a prison cell, alone, defeated. Her schemes finally caught up to her. Her victims finally believed. Her crimes finally punished. But Richard didn't think about her. He thought about Emma, about watching her grow up, about being there for every moment, every milestone, every joy and every struggle. That was his revenge. Living well, being present, proving that Jennifer hadn't won, hadn't destroyed them, hadn't taken what mattered most. Love, family, connection, the things money couldn't buy, the things success couldn't replace, the things that actually made life worth living. Richard closed his eyes, slept without nightmares, woke to Emma jumping on his bed at 7 in the morning. Daddy, it's Saturday. Can we make pancakes? Yes, sweetheart, we can make pancakes. They went downstairs together, hand in hand, father and daughter, survivors, healers. And in the kitchen, over flour and eggs and chocolate chips, they built another normal moment, another memory, another piece of the life they deserved. The monster was gone. The family remained. And that was all that mattered. The end.